Oh, I got it.
No, the mic won't work.
It's good. It's good. We adapt.
We are flexible.
What is there now? It's like having a disco party right now. Oh my god. Hey, did you get a parking spot?
Oh, on the police station.
Yeah.
I did. What happened? I'm walking in.
Oh.
The spot
Well, that's
from the front. Someone just like. Mitch went on tonight.
Hello. Okay, we're trying this again. Did that work?
I'll bring it back.
Is it on? No, is this on?
But this one,
Okay.
sure, okay.
All right, I'd like to call this meeting of the Newington Board of Education to order for Wednesday, February 5th, 2025. The time is 7 p.m. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Yeah, I was just making sure this, Deb, will you please call the roll? I don't think this mic is working.
Mary B. Rose,
Here?
I don't think it's
Brittany
working.
Carr,
Here. It's
John
not
Holland.
showing like,
Here.
Anthony Neely,
it's not showing like when I talk.
Timothy
The
Nichols,
camera.
Yours is not.
Amy Farrar,
Here,
Pam Sharma, Jessica Weaver,
here.
Anastasia Yap.
Here.
I have everyone here except Mr. Mealy.
Okay, so I don't feel, yeah, it doesn't seem like the mics are. Everyone can hear online, right? If
Yeah, I can hear you.
Anastasia,
online. I have
okay,
it in my ear.
perfect. Okay, perfect. All right, we'll just go with it. Thank you.
We'll see what works.
Okay. I would like to open up the floor to public participation on any matter related to board responsibilities. If you're on the phone, thanks, Anastasia. If you're on the phone, you are on Google Meet, you can raise your hand. And if you are in the room, head to the back of the table to be recognized. We also have our members of the town council here for a later agenda item. I don't see anybody.
We don't see the hands.
All right, seeing none. Mr. Halloran.
I'd like to move that we adjust the order of the agenda to discuss the possible action for the architectural plans for John Wallace renovation ahead of the presentation of the budget.
Second. We have a motion and second. Is there any discussion? We have a guest here in the room from the architecture firm, so we thought it would be nice to let him go first. Okay, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion passes unanimously. Do you want me to give him?
Yes, he's going to use the microphone. So we have Mr. Roach here from Fryer, who will be the architectural firm for John Wallace. He's setting up his boards, et cetera. And he's going to make a presentation this evening as an overview to the project. And the board will take up an action this evening, the town council at a later time. So I will now boot up his presentation. Mr. Roach, the floor is yours.
And thank you for putting me first on the agenda. I appreciate that. This project has been moving along swiftly. I've been working with Lou. I've been working with folks at the school, meeting with the principal and staff to get this all going along. We're at the point where we have received our final construction estimate. We are on budget. In fact, we're $40,000 under the grant amount right now, so we're in a good place. All the drawings are being reviewed. Lou sent them off to the authorities having jurisdiction, building official, fire marshal, 504 official, health official. So that's all getting reviewed, and our plan is to go to the state next week for our PCR review if we get all of our town approvals. So starting with that, I'm going to give a brief overview of the project. I do have plans and specifications. If anyone wants to flip through those, they're more than welcome. It'll cure your insomnia, I'm sure. Let me just advance. So just an overview of the school itself. As it stands, we are proposing interior alterations, renovations to the school. We're not proposing any change to the footprint itself. You advance. I'm starting with the phasing plan by Newfield Construction, who's your construction manager on this project, working in coordination with CSG, your owner's representative. And this shows how they plan to do the first phase of the project, which is starting, hopefully starting in June. And they're going to renovate the 7th and 8th grade wings first. That'll go June through December of this year. Next slide, please. And then after that, they will move over and renovate the 6th grade wings starting in at the end of the year and going through to the summertime. And that just shows where their initial thoughts on the logistics around the site. We're going to be finalizing these with the principal and his staff and under Lou's guidance to make sure everything is working well and that we're keeping pedestrians, and staff, and students safe during. Basically, in those things that we showed you at the school, this is a typical part of what we're doing. That's gutting everything in the wing. As it stands, you have corridors on the perimeter on either side. You have corridors which go straight out to the exterior. And in the middle, you have your classrooms, which are doors on the classrooms, very thin walls, the mountain casework, and all of that's being taken out, all the crochets. We're even taking, we're removing the windows. We're going to replace the windows. We're removing all the perimeter furring and providing a more energy compliant perimeter. We're also gutting the toilet rooms. We're taking out all the finishes, all the fixtures, and we're going to be replacing those in kind as well. So that if we advance to the next slide, you can see what our typical floor plan would look like. So we're going back with one single central corridor. We're pushing the classrooms to the exterior so they can get natural light. And by going from 2 corridors to 1, we're going to gain a little bit more room in each of the classrooms. So you have fairly evenly sized classrooms throughout, between 700 and 800 square feet. Most of them are less than 700 as they currently stand. They're all going to have built-in casework. At the front, we've worked with the teachers and the staff to make sure we have all their needs met. We're going to have plenty of whiteboards around the perimeter. We're going to have plenty of outlets and USB ports. We've got some breakout classrooms which have been planned for in the early schematics. Before we came on board, we had seen the work done in the previous study, and we had dialed that in to working with everyone to come up with a scheme. And then again, rebuilding the toilets. We're not adding or reducing any of the amount of fixtures in there. We're just replacing them all in kind, all new finishes there as well. And speaking of finishes, if you can go to the next slide. So this was our initial finish board that we presented to the staff and to facilities. And then we came back, we had meetings. We also had meetings that we went to see a furniture vendor to pick furniture as well, which will be the next phase of the project that we got approved from the state. But this was the first go around, and then we came back again and we lightened up some colors. We got rid of some of the grays. We added in a little bit of more of blue and teal. So, I mean, this is a bad representation, but the carpet was a little bit darker. So we brightened all these things up. We got buy-in from facilities, we got buy-in from the staff, and we've baked all that into the project. And we have a little representation of what that will look like on the next slide. So again, not the best graphic representation here, but you can see it's showing the furniture. We have movable desks, individual desks that can be pulled apart or moved together in different configurations. This is showing more of a star configuration right here. We've got teacher workstations. They've got movable podiums as well. Again, lots of connectability all around the room. The built-in casework has a lockable credenza, lockable cabinets, lateral files, and then above the countertop is charging stations. It's just outlets, USB ports for connectability there. As we said, whiteboards all around the rooms, which was a big ask for the teachers. They seemed happy with the final layouts. And then we're brightening the colors in there as well, as you see from the finished boards, bring in some of the school colors with green and tan and not as much yellow as we originally had proposed. But everyone seems very happy. Again, we're on budget, we're on schedule, we're moving to swiftly get all of our approvals with the town. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to entertain them.
Thank you. Now it's working. Do we have any questions? Yeah, yeah, you're going to be voting on this at your, use, just turn your mic on, or a mic on.
Thank you. This is very interesting and I'm excited about it. Just wondering if any of the FFE is able to be recycled or used by any of our other facilities?
The existing FF&E,
Yes.
I would defer to Lou for that.
Yes, the plan will be to keep all of it, that's still in good shape. The, part of the school will still have their old furniture and fixtures, so they'll have a partial use at, John Wallace, but they will also be able to be used anywhere in the district afterwards. They were, very basic, neutral colors and shapes, so it would be easy for us to integrate them and get a second generation life out of all of it.
Any other questions? Yes, please go ahead.
Move the Newington Board of Education contingently approve the construction drawings and cost estimate for the John Wallace Building Project 094-0112 as required by the state grant process. Once the John Wallace Project Building Committee approves these plans and cost estimate, this contingency will be removed.
Second. Thank you. We have a motion and a second. So again, Board of Ed will vote tonight and then council will vote at their next meeting. And I believe the Wallace Committee also will approve, but this is just for the Board of Ed tonight. Any further discussion? No? I think it looks great. Looks fantastic. Thank you so much. Yeah, the green, yeah, that really ties it together.
And the teachers love the furniture. That portable podium is a huge hit.
Yeah. Mr. Halloran.
Just a quick comment. It's nice, I know, Tim and I are on the building committee. To see it from the very beginning to starting to actually come to fruition is a really rewarding feeling, and knowing that we are 40 grand under the grant budget is just the cherry on top. So thank you.
Okay, Deb, will you please call the
Mary
vote?
Baker,
Yes.
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
Ted Newton,
Yes.
Steve Parati,
Yes.
Sam Arma,
Yes.
Jessica Weaver,
Yes.
Anastasia,
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you for being here.
Appreciate it.
Want us to sign?
Oh, yes. Okay. Now we can move on to presentation of our superintendent's budget for 25-26. And like I had mentioned earlier, but our town council, town manager, assistant town manager are also here. So we can have just full transparency. This is the first time we're seeing it as well. So full transparency in this process like we did last year. I hope that we can collaboratively work together and come to an agreeable budget, but this is the very first step in our long budget process. So thank you all who could be here, and Dr. Brummet, it's all yours.
Thank you very much, Board Chair Parati. So again, a warm welcome to our colleagues from the town. We really appreciate you being here. I would also like to point out members of my team who were integral into putting this budget together. Our budget process starts in October, and, there's been a lot of meetings and chiseling, and I call it my Ginsu knife process, happening over the last several months. But I'd like to introduce Lou Giacomowitz as our CFO, but very involved in the process. Karen Sear, Assistant Business Manager. Kristen Freeman, Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction. And then rounding the corner to Mr. Farisi, our Assistant Superintendent for Human Capital Development. And in the audience, we have Craig Holland, IT, and Mr. Dean Barnes from our bus director. A lot of conversations about IT and buses that will come up this evening. And Talisha Foy, I believe I saw her in the audience as well, who's our Assistant Director of Human Resources. So welcome to everybody. I will begin, and I'll let Board Chair manage any questions that come along. But I wanted to make sure everyone knew that our goal this evening is to adhere to our mission and vision. So what you see in the budget reflects that. And I also wanted to give a warm welcome. Sorry, I have several teachers in the audience. Holly Mackey, NTA President, Jen Rodriguez, Frank McGoldrick, and we have a bunch of folks online as well. So thank you for coming out either online or in person to hear about the budget. Their first time hearing it too. So our mission and vision drive this budget ask. Obviously, we want every student in our district to be equipped with the skills and knowledge to become contributing members of their community, many of whom are sitting around the table, I might add, and highly prepared to thrive in life after graduation. So we want to create a system and continue to grow a system that engages our students, empowers them, and make sure they're having rigorous academic experiences, and making sure we create social and emotional safety and respect all the students in our community, regardless of their identity or their race. We have created quite a number of years ago, under Kristen's leadership, our Portrait of a Graduate. And we refer to this all the time. It's something that teachers assess all the time, where we want to make sure our kids leave the system being excellent communicators, good citizens, and positive and deep thinkers. And that's described under those bullets. I'll let you review that. Everyone at their table does have a copy of this presentation. Made a few tweaks after it went to print, but by and large, you have a very similar replica of what's being presented. I wouldn't be a good superintendent if I didn't do a little bragging this evening while I had a good audience in the room. But I wanted to let you know what kind of return on investment we are getting from the budget dollars that the town has put forth year to year, as well as maximizing the use of grants. So we have a grant-funded mental health counselor at the high school, and she provides services to both the high school and both middle schools. And I believe as a direct result of that position, our drug expulsions are down to 0 this year, up from a high of 14 a few years ago. Her intervention provides that if student is caught with a drug on campus, they get a very important counseling program with her. And then if they were to have a repeat offense, they would be expelled, and we haven't had to do that. So her programs, which are both reactive or proactive as well, a lot of work on that, which I'll describe later. We have partnered with Connecticut Behavioral Health to expand our mental health services at all of our schools. That's at no cost to the board. Our Nor'easter Afternoon Academy is working with students who have trouble being successful during the school day. They are doing very well in that new program, and they earned 67.5 credits in 6 months last year, and they're doing just as well this year. Anna Reynolds, Ruth Chafee, and John Patterson were named schools of distinction this year due to their achievements in math and language arts. Our high school kids in the class of 2024 earned over 1,000 college credits, which saves our parents about $1 million in tuition. Newington High School is year to year at the top of the state for offering college credit bearing courses. And we're very proud of that because it's such a win-win to leave high school. Many of our kids leave high school and they start college as sophomores. Year to year, we're also recognized by National Association of Music Merchants as being one of the top communities for music students. And any of you that have been to our concerts, our plays, know exactly why that is the case. One of our, Marco Trillo was named the CAS Assistant Principal of the Year. He is the Assistant Principal at Wallace. And Tara Tigno, Principal at Newington High, is a finalist for that very same honor. We'll know more about her where she stands in that in a few weeks. We are working really hard to establish equitable disciplinary practices and SEL practices to improve climate and culture. Last week, the board heard from the Wallace leadership team, and they were very impressed with the reduction in suspensions and office referrals that Wallace has realized by implementing these processes. And what they were really clear about is restorative doesn't mean you get off the hook. Actually, restorative means you have to make up for when you've done something wrong. And that includes if I've caused any damage to school property, I stay after school with the custodian and I repair what I've damaged. And that's just one example. A moment ago, you heard from our architect that the teachers at Wallace wanted a lot of whiteboards, and one might wonder why. Isn't that kind of old school? But no, there's a new concept or an instructional strategy called building thinking classrooms. And that has taken off throughout our district. And that's where kids are standing up in the classroom doing math work in teams using a whiteboard. Our board had a chance to experience that last spring. And it has really, at the middle level, we are seeing amazing results. Kids are growing at least 1 year in math. We're seeing that impact on our interim assessments, and we're starting to see that impact as well on the SBA statewide testing. So it's no surprise to me, and I was there when the teachers were asking for that with the architects a few months back, about we want as many whiteboards as possible because this allows us to do this. And there are similar applications of those strategies for English and reading. Our culture responsive pedagogy practices are expanding district-wide. Pre-K expansion continues to go well. We've got full and half-day sessions at every school, and the full-day sessions are full. They've been full since like the spring of last year. We partnered with Newington Human Services to provide mental health support and drug prevention programs at NPS. And we have a grant-funded school-based health center now at the high school. That's a new development. It started in the fall, which provides mental health services at the high school and also APRN services at the high school. So that's underway, no cost to the board. Everything is billed back to insurance or was funded through the grant that we were awarded. And of course, I've got to do a bang out here to the sports and there's many good things happening in sports, but I'll highlight our football team that advanced to the Class AA semifinals. They lost the Thanksgiving Day to Weathersfield, but kicked some serious football keister the following game, which was awesome. But our coach, John Aquavita, also was named the New York Giants Coach of the Week, which was a huge honor back in November. So we're making a lot of strides across all facets of our organization. Demographics, I really always want to show our stakeholders what our students, what comprises our student body here in Newington. And you can see that we continue to grow in diversity and complexity. So I use some of the statistics that the state has identified as things that make a district have more needs. You can see our special ed numbers, do continue to rise. They went down a little bit last year, but this year they're back up to 16.6. We're slightly below the state. The state's averaging about 18%. A lot of reasons behind that number, but it is something that creates a financial need for the district. 504 is a regular ed program where you just provide accommodations for students. Back when many of us were in school, it didn't exist, but now it is something you have to provide. And the problem with that is there are absolutely no dollars associated with that from the federal or state government. And 7.6% of our kids have a 504 plan. Our ML population is relatively stable, down 0.1% from last year. So 9.6% of our students require services because of their dual language needs. Free reduced lunch went down a hair this year from 36% to 35.8%, but that's still a good chunk of our population. And right now we serve 131 open choice students from Hartford. And again, just in case folks are not clear on that program, kids choose Newington through a lottery system. We get reimbursed $8,000 per student, along with some additional reimbursements for students who might have special needs, and some bonus money for having 3% of our 3% of our population is open choice. So it is a program that is good for the children, but also brings a lot of revenue to Newington.
Ms. Weaver?
Just also want to clarify too, it's only kids from Hartford. I think sometimes that gets confused around
Yes.
this time, so just want to clarify.
Only in Hartford, and if for some reason you're in Hartford and you move out of Hartford, you are no longer eligible for the program. It's strictly kids who reside in Hartford. Here's the breakdown of how we are in our race and ethnicity, and as you can see, we're about 50% white right now, with the rest of our population being a significant amount of students are Hispanic, Asian Pacific Islander, Black, multiple races, and less than 1% of our children are American Indian. All right, I think it's time for a quiz. I think it's based on these statistics, it won't surprise you that English is still the #1 language in Newington, but what do you think the #2 language is? What? Spanish, for sure. Okay, #3. All right, ready? Final answer. Third is Polish. Fourth is Portuguese. And then you can see Vietnamese is another very growing language in Newington. Ukrainian, Malayalam, which is an Indian language. I did look that up, thanks to my intern who's also on the call. Urdu, folks from Pakistan, Albanian, and Mandarin and Russian bring up the rear as the 10th most populated language. So you can see with students, and we did some instructional rounds today at one of our elementary schools, and a teacher literally was translating into 2 different languages using an app while trying to teach reading. So you can see the demands on a teacher's time to do that. So there are things that we need to support those efforts, and that we're legally required to do too. The goal of this budget is to continue all of our current programs. We also want to enhance school security, support student mental health and special education mandates, continue to expand pre-K, comply with state mandates, which include the HVAC mandate, a bilingual teacher mandate, and a Connecticut paid sick leave mandate that came on the docket in January. We also want our teachers to experience job security. We don't have any plans to reduce positions, but if there were some that come up that we could, it would only be through attrition. And we want to continue to leverage grants to offset the budget or to offer $0 impact programs. As I mentioned already, that would include the Connecticut Behavioral Health and the School-Based Health Center. Here's what we would like to accomplish in the budget this year to enhance our security, adhere to mandates, and provide minor program enhancements. We want to add 2 courses to the high school, Jewelry 2 and Cell Biology. We want to expand pre-K again by offering 1 more section at Patterson, which will be offset in great part by tuition charges. We want to add a 1.0 bilingual teacher district-wide, which is now required because we have a concentration of 20 or more Spanish-speaking students at Wallace and at the high school. So now we are mandated to do that. We believe we can cover most of the costs of that, though, by reducing 2.5 bilingual tutors. So getting the skills and disposition of a bilingual teacher by offsetting that against the cost of some of our tutors. We believe we'll be able to relocate the tutors to other positions that become vacant. At this time, it does look like we're going to need a kindergarten teacher at Green due to class sizes. We did reduce 1 section last year when the kindergarten age changed, but now we anticipate a bigger group of students coming in. But we do believe a good chunk of the cost of that will be offset by the open choice grant. We are recommending a 1.0 FTE school psychologist. Right now, we only have 1 at the high school, and the testing load for that, as well as all the requirements to test kids who are in magnet schools, is just a real drain. Currently, we do that by contracting out for $50,000. We believe, we now are recommending that we would reallocate that money toward a 1.0 school psychologist. The differential is about $40,000. We want to expand our new benchmark reading program, which is going well, to our pre-K kids. We think the big lever with pre-K is it gets our kids ready to learn. So we want them exposed to our new reading program. They are this year in a pilot fashion, but next year we want to memorialize that and having it fully implemented. Next year, we're going to expand the instructional minutes in math and reading at grade 5. That will be no cost. It's just a matter of realigning how teachers work their day. We also want to enhance our district-wide security by installing blind spot cameras. For security reasons, I won't tell you where all the blind spots are, but we do have some. I also want to adequately fund the bus replacement cycle and adhere to HVAC mandates. So these funding assumptions are already in the budget. Right now, we anticipate, unless there are any federal changes, that we will have $2.7 million in title grants, IDEA, open choice, the ARP mental health grant that I mentioned earlier, and the Perkins grant. So those are the combined sum total of the grants that we have to offset the budget. We also worked with the town last year to develop an MOU, which allows us to leverage money that we get in from open choice special ed students. It gets kind of turned around into the non-lapsing fund. So we anticipate transferring $400,000 this year into the non-lapsing fund, which will offset next year's budget. It's a bit of a circuitous route, but it essentially offsets the budget. We believe that we plan on relying on the non-lapsing fund next year in the amount of $2.7 million. We thought we were going to be using all of the non-lapsing fund this year, but through some breaks in attrition and lower salaries and a few other non-filled positions, we believe we're only going to rely on $1 million of the non-lapsing fund this year. Magnet school tuition will continue to be paid directly from the ECS grant, and I'll show you that the town is likely going to get a big increase in that this year. And we have maximized our 3% reimbursement from open choice, which is $1.2 million. And by the way, that top number, there are multiple open choice grants. This one is the attendance grant. So there's some that are for other reasons, but the big one is the attendance grant. We had a lot of proposals from our teachers and our plans committee. That's a committee that meets annually for any new programs that are proposed. There was a request to add a social worker at John Wallace. There was a request to add additional grade level team leaders at Kellogg and Wallace, flex math teacher and reading teacher at Wallace, a 0.2 FTE music teacher for Anna Reynolds and Patterson, and additional special education teachers to expand our successful co-teaching model. I put in parentheses the para audit. Currently, we are looking at our entire population of paras district-wide, and it's a pretty large number. And I'll mention in a subsequent slide that it's very difficult for us to get paras in Newington because we don't have benefits, so we're not attractive to a lot of folks. We're virtually the only district in the state that does not have benefited para positions. So we've also had to rely on outside agencies. Long story short, we are now seeing, can we leverage the resources in the para line towards some special education teachers? We are doing a pilot this year at Reynolds. We had 4 unfilled para positions at Reynolds this year and hired a special ed teacher a few weeks ago. And we're trying to see if that position can offset the needs of those paras. And myself and Principal Jason Smith are working on an audit together with the special ed department to see how we can expand that perhaps, because we have a very, very successful co-teaching model. And for those that aren't aware, what that means is the special ed and the regular ed teacher collaborate, not for the whole day, but for chunks of the day, teaching kids at the same time. And you really get a lot of good interventions going. We saw it today at E Green during a rounds visit in a first grade classroom where 2 sets of kids with needs were getting teaching from the teacher as well as a special ed teacher at the same time. And when we look at the data, it's extraordinarily compelling for that model. So as everyone around the table is painfully aware, there are cost escalations that continue to happen. Special ed is we're not alone. Every district in the state is concerned about special ed funding. It's actually at the top of the legislators' mindset this year as well, which is a good thing. But we have seen since 2018, a close to 50% increase in special education costs. Unfortunately, the special ed grants that we get from the federal government are fairly flat. From 2018 to now, it's only gone up 7%. And it only makes up a very small portion of our funding. It's never been fully funded at the federal level. Our costs of our EL programs, and this is just for certified staff, and that's our kids again with multilingual needs, has gone up 113% because of our diversity that continues to occur. The cost of magnet school tuition has gone down a little bit. The state has been subsidizing it, and I do see that it is in the governor's budget for next year as well. So that will reduce that burden. And one of the pieces of good news on this chart is that the ECS money received by the town continues to go up. It's gone up about 29% over the last 7 years. And it is expected to go up this year as well. Newington is considered sort of a bittersweet win. You get more money for ECS, but that also means you have more needs. So again, I think some of these things I've already mentioned. Most districts in Connecticut have been experiencing the same inflation that we all have, 6 to 7% over the last several years. We have a certified staff critical shortage in the state. It used to be just math and science teachers were hard to find. Now it's really true for many areas. So that results in us hiring teachers at a higher step because they're just hard to find and there's a competition for teachers. We have severe shortages in academic support staff. That is a statewide issue, but we have a little bit more of an issue. Special ed volatility costs, that just continues. And we have several new unfunded mandates, Connecticut paid sick leave and the HVAC mandate have no money with them. We continue, what's unique to Newington on the flip side of that chart is we are increasingly diverse, our kids are increasingly complex, and that's why we have to bring in, or continue programs such as our Effective School Solutions program, intervention programs, and our bilingual and multilingual programs. And I mentioned earlier that we have no health benefits for our paras, which makes it super hard to recruit. And then a concurrent issue is then we have to rely on outside agencies. So there are agencies in the state of Connecticut that hire paras very kindly, but then they let you hire them from them. And as you can imagine, there's a little surcharge at the top for their trouble. So we're finding that the cost of paras from those agencies is pretty close to the cost of a teacher, which is one of the things that prompted the para audit. And budgets, our budgets have relied on our non-lapsing fund utilization since post-COVID, and that could eventually lead to a funding cliff. So just a summary of the unfunded mandates. I know the town, I'm sure, has others that they have to deal with. Paid sick leave, that went into effect in January. It is a very significant logistical challenge. It's also a financial challenge to provide sick days to both folks who didn't have them already and to folks who have them already are getting more. I did meet with Speaker of the House Ritter's office the other day, and I asked them, was this designed to provide sick days to folks that already had them in their contract? And they said, no. I don't know if that's going to change. I don't know why they're surprised by that, because it was very clear. We all met with the Department of Labor, and it was very clear. But now, for now, this mandate costs us about $100,000 to implement and to provide extra sick days. The indoor air quality reporting is a requirement. Lou and Jason Plum have done a great job keeping our costs down. There are no more grants for that, so we're on our own to pay for any of the improvements. So there's the indoor air quality, and there's also the HVAC mandate, and that's continuously upgrading your HVAC systems so they meet state standards. So both of those are in our capital budget. And as I mentioned earlier, we now have a critical mass of Spanish-speaking students at Wallace and the high school. So that is an estimated cost of about $91,000. So the total cost of unfunded mandates in their first year is about $391,000, but our estimated cost ongoing for these unfunded mandates will be $366,352. So that's a big chunk of change for things that the is required, but we aren't going to get any state or federal dollars. This is a summary of our contractual obligations. Everyone's familiar with the fact that when you have a bargaining unit, those salary increases are preset by what's dictated in the contract. So each of, I won't read this to you, but this shows you the top, virtually everyone in this top half of the chart is in a bargaining unit. Our teachers, our AFSCME, which is our secretaries, bus drivers, custodians, cafeteria, our NASA administrators, nurses have a contract, and our non-instructional administrators have a contract. So that top half is showing everything that is dictated by their contracts. Below that is ATs. Those are, their salary is set by the town. Paras and tutors, we're estimating about a 4% increase. They're not in a bargaining unit. And there are other positions that are non-bargaining, such as some of our bus drivers and cafeteria folks are non-bargaining, tutors, and a few others. So the big driver in our budget, as it always is the cost of our salaries, and we're a human service industry, so that's not surprising. So it's 2.68% of our total budget increase ask, or $2,333,877. As a reminder, and I mentioned it briefly earlier, we worked with the town earlier this year on a MOU. And as a reminder, our board CIP account is capped at 1.2 million. So this year, we anticipate the revenue from that account, which is a combination of, the biggest contributor is the open choice special ed reimbursements. There's also some interest income and fees for our building utilization, but the big amount of money comes in from open choice. So without this MOU continuing, those excess revenues that go over 1.2 million would be at risk of forfeiture. And we are, as I mentioned earlier, using a portion of those reimbursements to offset our operating budget by means of the non-lapsing fund. So we will be approaching the town on or before August 31st to renew that, because it's an extremely important funding strategy for us, and it does reduce our operating cost ask. And here's another summary of some of the additional budget drivers. I've mentioned earlier special ed, that's going up $1.4 million, or a 1.67% increase. Already mentioned the salaries. Our health insurance estimated costs, and these are dictated to us by the agent of record. We're not allowed to come up with a number. This is a real number that is given to us at $1,066,000, and that's 1.22%. All other increases, that includes, but it's not limited to, utilities, repairs, curricular supplies. That's 1.1 million, and that's 1.29%. So our increase request for this year is 5.9 million at 6.86% increase. We also wanted to spell out how the non-lapsing fund would be used this year. Initially, we proposed in last year's budget that we would need to use 3.3 million of that. That's our total amount. That's what's in there right now. Is that correct, Lou? 3.3 million? Currently, given our projections and, like I said, some unfilled positions, some breakage in the budget, we believe we're only going to need to use 1 million of that, which would leave 2.7 million for next year's budget. So that is baked into that 6.68%. So looking at the proposed budget from last year and the proposed budget, or the final budget for last year, our ask this year is $93 million, and the non-lapsing money is 3% of that. Here's another, just a display of our utilization of grant monies. We do have over 53.3 positions in the district. I know 0.3 position, it's a fraction of someone. But it's, $2.7 million in grant utilization for a variety of positions. Based on the ins and outs of people that have come and gone or new folks that we want to add, The big add this year, because we're stable in all our other areas or down in some of the non-bargaining units, but I didn't put them on this chart. We are anticipating going from 365.2 NTA members to 369.2 NTA members, which is 4. And NTA is the Teachers Association, so certified teaching positions. All other positions are flat funded. And as I mentioned, there are grant offsets going against, I believe, all of those positions to a certain degree. And to recap, that is a bilingual teacher, a kindergarten teacher, a pre-K teacher, and school psychologist. Thank you, Steve. And then again, our instructional, the bulk of our money, salary-wise, is for instructional staffing, 92% of our budget this year and 92.5% next year, and 7.5% of our budget is administration. So there are some pending issues that could have a positive impact on this budget, but it's always unknown at this time. But we currently are planning on relying on the non-lapsing fund at 2.3 million. We continue to watch our budget, we reconcile it, we look at it. If that $1 million is not used in totality that we've projected for the rest of this year, we could set it aside for next year. Attrition possibilities, when folks leave the district, we always look at, is there a need to replace? So if there's something that comes along that is of that mindset, we would do it. Right now, we don't have any anticipated attrition that we wouldn't replace. The health insurance account is reviewed numerous times between now and the end of this fiscal year, but that could result in a further reduction. The most recent update did result in a reduction. We were originally projecting a 10% increase in health insurance, and it's down to what, 6% now, Lou? I did write a grant with help from our Nor'easter Academy teachers for that program at the high school. It's pending. It's $440,000. That would go straight as an offset to the budget. We are projecting a higher number of open choice kids next year. It could result in additional reimbursements. It's just too soon to tell because you claim a lot of seats, but you don't know what will actually be filled. Yesterday, or actually the day before, Kate Farrar called me and wanted some information about excess costs because she is arguing or endorsing at the state that there's that $310 million that they just found in lying around. It was, I believe, interest from ARP ESSER dollars. And they're looking to leverage that through putting it to excess cost because every district is underfunded in excess cost because the state never fully funds it. In fact, the governor is going to increase it if his budget goes through by $40 million next year, and that's like a quarter of what was requested to make it whole. So if Kate and her team are successful, and I provided her with some data with some of the folks that I work with at CAPS, we would then have another offset to this budget. I just don't know how soon we'll get that word back. And I do believe the state is looking at the Connecticut paid sick leave requirement for school districts. I don't know where that will go or not go, but they're looking at it. And this is just a history since 2020, 2021 of our budgets. So you can, I won't read to everybody. We had a 0% from 21 to 22, and then it shows the increases subsequent to that. And again, our total for right now is 6.86% increase or $5.9 million. And here's our history, budget history 2017 to present. The average over 8 years is 2.75. And you can see the ups and downs of that during that time frame. And the budget started off much higher than what you saw this evening. Our principals and others cut quite a bit before it came to my desk. And through the course of our budget workshops over the last several weeks, my team and I, with input from all of our teachers and or administrators, cut about $624,000 out of the budget. So that's how we landed at 6.86%. The capital budget is one that I would like to take a little time with right now. Our big components out of capital are our technology replacement cycle and our bus replacement cycle. I'm going to briefly talk about an overview of that, and then Lou is going to help me with the bus replacement cycle because that chart is a bit complex. So our capital plan, and the town received this back in December. It's required to go to the town by December. We approved it, the board approved it on November 13th. And I wanted to just to show you, oh, I gotta get to the right screen here. There it goes. This shows the front, you can read through this. Everyone has a copy of it. Those first few pages are just explanatory about what constitutes a capital expense, so on and so forth. History of expenditures. I won't go through that tonight, but I wanted to show our board and town council members that in 2022, 23, as well as 23, 24, we had leveraged some of our capital resources to offset the board's budget. In 22, 23, we returned $400,000 to the town, but it was an agreement that they would then apply that to the board's budget. So it was a different approach at that time, but it did help reduce our ask that year. And then the subsequent year, we did place $400,000 of tuition receipts in the non-lapsing fund, and they were used to offset the budget in that year. So we highlighted those so folks could see that. Okay. This just reflects how we're using our capital budget this year. I won't go into a lot of detail other than we are starting some HVAC upgrades, mostly at Martin Kellogg. We are doing some upgrades to security. Notably this year, we did door locks so that all of our classroom doors district-wide are locked at all times. If you have your door open, all you have to do is shut it. So in the event of a crisis, your door's locked. And that is really what will save lives in a crisis. Chromebooks are a major component of our capital. And we did some paving. Actually, we postponed some paving and used that money to buy a utility vehicle that was 10 years old, I'm sorry, or 96,000 miles on it. Now, for this coming year, we are required to do a 5-year projection. And of course, what's going to happen in 5 years from now, these are just, what we currently see. We do see needing to use resources for HVAC, carpet replacement, painting, playground repairs or upgrades, security. Our big dollar ask there for next year is, as I mentioned, blind spots. Our Director of Security, Mike Morgan, went to every school and walked through with principals to see any trouble areas that maybe they didn't always see what was happening. And that did generate, and about half of that 60,000 is going to be to cameras. District-wide Chromebooks every year, we asked for we'll allocate that from the board CIP. Paving, 50,000 doesn't do a lot for paving, it's mostly repairs. And typically we have one district-wide vehicle. Again, this is not buses, these are some of our maintenance vehicles that need to be replaced or security vehicles from year to year. And then in the out years, we've projected similar expenses. As time goes along in subsequent years, you probably will see adjustments to some of those. But for next year, that is what we're projecting at this time for $1.2 million. For the town CIP, which is what the town would consider in their coming budget deliberations, the bulk of our ask there is for the Garfield Street bus yard paving. I have pictures which I can show you briefly, but the fact that our buses are on gravel lots at this time is causing quite a bit of damage to them. Dean and his team did a presentation a few weeks ago, and very young buses are already getting rusted because of the gravel and the moisture that is just not good for our buses. So we're really needing to do that this year. There was money initially for that, but because the bus replacement cycle hadn't been funded the last few years, we had to use Garfield monies for that. We were authorized and told to. So that is still an ask. We understand and have been in touch with the town about their own project for Garfield Street. So if we can hop on that and then we could take this out of next year's budget, but we would need money to do it right now. We'd probably have to rob Peter to pay Paul to make it happen in this fiscal year. But it is a need, and it's been a need for a number of years. I've worked with the town and met with community members about alternative sites for our buses, and there's just never been a viable alternative site that wouldn't cost a lot of money. And we've looked at Pasco Place, some Alumni Road, other places that just either were no longer interested in having their land sold or just are unsuitable space that we just wouldn't work out. And then the biggest chunk, though, in the town CIP request is the bus replacement cycle. And I know that probably looks like a large amount to the town and the board, but what's happening is we've got a bubble year, number of years coming up, which Lou will explain shortly. And it has to do with whether the town, because the board's already obviously approved this, whether the town wants to avoid big variances in the bus replacement cycle. But you'll see what the real amount needed for next year is versus the spread out amount. And it would really be up to the town to decide how to go about that. We're just trying to be looking at financial planning to avoid any big increases. And last but not least, we have nothing in our larger bonding projects right now. Obviously, Wallace is underway. A wish list item has always been the turf field at Alumni Field. I'll bring it up every year. I think it would be an amazing, place for our community to have another field that has that. Most high schools in the state do have turf fields, but obviously that would take a bonding approach. And then I often get asked, so what's the next school that needs a renovation? It would be Martin Kellogg, but good news, it's not until at least 2029. So that's as early as that would need to be done. But we do have to do some ongoing HVAC upgrades there. So that is capital. Yes.
Would you, just use your, do we have
Is that information located in this pamphlet here?
I don't, is it in the budget book, Karen? No, the budget book is strictly the operating budget. I did send, actually it is linked to this, so I can send it to you electronically. So I would, after this meeting, I can send you the electronic version, which is linked. And that would also give you some backup data if you wanted it. So yes, you can get it that way. The town has it. I don't know at what point they distribute it, or maybe it's baked into their budget book at some point. I think that's how it
If you
goes.
could email it to all of us, that'd be
I
great.
will absolutely do that. All right. And then I'll just quickly show you the current bus conditions. We have a loving title of this called Bus Rust. And I think Dean and Awesome, you're entitled it. But there's a lot of slides here and I'm not going to show you as many as there are, but just some.
show the really bad one.
Okay. No, just to show you how we understand that there's still a desire maybe to put our buses somewhere else, but while that's still being looked at, we have a real critical issue with our buses. So I'm not going to explain this as eloquently as Dean did, but there is bus cage or fuel cage rust under our buses. Let me see if I can show you some that are easy to see. I think that's pretty apparent there. The transmission line is rusty, and when that goes, we're up against a $1,400 repair. And I think folks around the table know that buses are held to an extremely high standard. You could maybe drive your car on the street with this scenario, but we get inspected every 90 days. And that doesn't pass muster with the inspectors because we're just held to a very high standard because we transport children who are very precious to us. And a few more examples of rust. So you just see tailpipes, fuel cages, there's a big hole. I'm not going to go into that. It'll be linked. So when you hit the electronic version of this, you can see it. But many of these buses depicted in the slideshow are not that old. They just, unfortunately, through the moisture piece, have run into some challenges. And then if the tech replacement cycle is linked into this page, and that's managed out of Craig Holland's office. But just so folks know exactly what's part of that, we do a Chromebook replacement cycle every year. And each year we do 3 grade levels. It's actually the same 3 grade levels every year because it's a fresh set of kids every year. So grades K, 5, and 9 each year get new Chromebooks. Kids who are not in those grades take their current Chromebooks and continue forward with them. Besides that expense, which is the biggest lift, we also have different programs throughout the district that need Chromebooks. This year, the Transition Academy that's located here at Town Hall needs Chromebooks. Some of our special ed students need iPads. One of our programs at Patterson needs a refresh. And then we have laptop refreshes through different offices or departments, instructional displays, much like you see behind me and on the side. Document cameras are a big hit here in Newington. Each teacher has a document camera and it just displays what they see on their desk to all the kids. It's very, very widely used. And clerical computers and firewalls. Our district has extremely strong firewalls, which we're proud of because it's avoided us a lot of trouble. And other than outside agencies like Power School who had a breach this year, that had nothing to do with us. They had that on their end, but we had to deal with that. So I'm going to just quickly turn this over to Lou for an explanation of the bus replacement cycle, especially because I know there was that is a larger amount than normal. So Lou is just going to try to briefly give you an overview of what this elaborate chart really means.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Okay, the simple objective of the chart is to extrapolate what it would cost to replace the whole fleet, and then how you would do it over the time frame of the replacement cycle, which right now is 11 years. What you see on the left-hand side of the graphic, if you look at where it says bubble, everything to the left of that is what I'm speaking of right now. That's a very simple scattergram of the different types of vehicles we have and how long we've had them. So as you look through, you can see the 5th line down in 2015-16, it's showing that we have received purchased 7 full-size buses that year. And that will be scheduled for retirement in the year 2027. You know, going out all the way across just to the other side of the bubble line is the current estimated price for that type of vehicle, all counted out for everybody there. The grand total of redoing the entire fleet is $8,111,000 in current cost to reimburse, or not reimburse, but to repurchase an entire fleet, which right now is about 76 vehicles for us. Okay, so as you can see, the things at the top in blue are those that are off the replacement cycle. As far as being costed into it, those are the ones that are either waiting for a replacement bus to come in, or we're just keeping them for spares because they're still in good enough condition to get some mileage out of them, where there's, they've extended past their useful life. Okay, so as you look through the whole thing, you can see down at the very bottom in the totals, it's showing 41 full-size buses, 5, I can't read whatever the top line is there.
That's the
10 passenger wheelchair bus with air conditioning, then 22 passenger air conditioning seatbelt bus, 30 passenger with a lift, 30 passenger just with AC, some vans, and then the athletic buses, which are the regular big yellow buses that get retired from that job, stick around for a few more years to run athletics for us. So that's the package that's here for us. And you can see the years of service based on the age of the vehicles that are there. You just count up how many vehicle years they've been around. You can see here that it's 412 years for the 76 vehicles. And if you scroll down a little bit further, you'll see the average age by grouping and then an overall age. So we're between 5 and 6 years of age right now. We've been as high as 7.5 in this area. And this is about the best we've ever been as far as our general average of vehicle age. Now, when you look at contracted bus fleets that are purchased, they're typically 5-year duration, and the requirement in year 1 is every bus that is on the road every day is brand new. And they have some provisions where they can have vehicles that are a bit older, maybe up to 8 years of age, which can be used as the wraparound for the fleet. So you don't have to have a brand new bus sitting in the garage every day waiting. You can have an older vehicle as long as it meets the inspection standards. So you would think most of the contracted bus fleet numbers like that will be very low in the first year or two of a contract. And as they get closer to the 5-year mark, they might be approaching this 5.4 year number, maybe even a little bit higher. But we're really operating every year on the higher end of the expected useful life of all vehicles. And, you know, we do a great job with the maintenance team the dean has of being able to sustain them, having very strong recommendations and support from the inspectors that come around, and being able to manage the cost of keeping the fleet roadworthy in very reasonable standards. You know, in the last few years with relying fully on parking on the gravel lot, you do have the moisture problem because of the wicking of all the moisture that's in the ground to the undercarriage of the buses. That's what instigates the rust that you have. So realistically, at some point, an 11-year useful life won't be sustainable, because once the vehicles are out there for 11 years, they won't be around any longer. We'll probably end up needing to be down around the 9-year average if we're going to continue with having them parked on the gravel. If the restoration project for the lot on Garfield Street is brought forward and completed, that will help mitigate that issue and will allow us to be able to sustain the 11-year replacement cycle indefinitely at this point. Okay. All right. So going over on the right-hand side on the bottom where the yellow captions are, that's the information regarding what it's cost to buy vehicles in the last couple of years. So a full-sized bus 2 years ago was $124,000, 123. The ones that we were looking at last fall were 142,000. And there's been significant pressures on that, because over about 8 years, it's gone from 80,000 to 142,000. So the inflation problem, which also goes along with some of the new safety mandates that are mandated for the vehicles, contribute to the escalated pricing. And then we have the same 6 primary categories that you saw going across the grid. So our vehicles here, other than vans, anywhere from $108,000 up to $150,000 for a replacement. So they are not inexpensive vehicles to go out and acquire new ones. So maintaining the longevity, you know, is a very cost-effective, economical choice that we make. Okay, so I can ask you to scroll back up a little bit to show the right-hand side of the grid. Okay, so where I have bubble in the green is to accentuate the ebbs and the flows of the vehicle purchase history we've had over the years. You know, of our 76 vehicles, I believe it's 45 of them were purchased in that 5-year window. So if you're trying to keep up with the vehicles that are aging out and being able to have cash resources behind that to be able to purchase a similar number of vehicles, we'd have to adjust the straight line average to be able to have adequate resources in those years. So what you'll see is in the blue columns over, you'll have a straight line number, no factoring in or hedging because of the bubble that's there. And it works out to be about $737,000 a year for 11 years to sustain that. In the right-hand column where I called it bubble funding is in those 5 years, making the suggestion that by putting $400,000 in those years to help purchase during that bubble, you know, the last few years of the 11-year cycle can go back down to $337,000. You know, I'm just concerned that we'll run out of funding to be able to keep up with the replacement requirements. So if we have 45 vehicles aging out, and let's say 35 of them have to go just because of age and not being able to pass inspection anymore, will we have enough money set aside to be able to even purchase something a little bit less than the actual curve that we have, the bubble we have to conquer that's here? So these are decisions that are for you folks to consider. I know in the board CIP document, we had proposed that it had the higher funding level to support the bubble. Those are certainly decisions that you have to factor and weigh in what's the, affordability, sustainability of different things, because what you can see on the far right-hand column is funding, out to the bottom side, you'll see a number that's $488,275. Since we moved to this 11-year cycle, that was the funding that the town was able to come in 1 year over the last 4 years toward this. Now, we made other inroads by money that we had in our Garfield Street Fund for the restoration of the parking lot out there. Over the last 2 years, we've exhausted all of it in buying buses, which was around another $700,000 that was there. So we haven't gone without, but it hasn't been funded through the 11-year cycle. So when those opportunities to use the one-time resources go away, it'll all fall back to the 11-year plan for funding. Okay. Any questions on that? I know I covered a lot of ground in a couple minutes.
Just use your mic, please.
Yep.
Is there a way you could estimate how much would be, if the Garfield lot is paved, and I would assume by maybe the cheap bituminous or whatever, we wouldn't do anything really fancy, how much this would reduce or extend the life? And how it would positively impact the bus budget?
Right. Right now, we received estimates from Chris Zibideo, town engineer, that if our lot reconstruction was packaged in with the other work this year that the town's doing along Garfield Street, it'd be somewhere between $260,000 and $300,000 to do that. And that would include all of the requirements for oil separation for the storm drainage system, repaving across the street, make it all brand new in there for the parking things. And we would move our telephone pole to the back and add a couple more for additional lighting and safety that's there. The primary concern should be if the buses continue to be subjected to the diminishing of the undercarriage because of the moisture conditions, you'll lose the ability to have an 11-year cycle. The buses will wear out, will not pass inspection, and you'll be getting rid of them at about the 9-year mark that's here. So doing the parking lot, taking away that difficult condition of the moisture, which just eats away at what you have for a resource, you'll be able to get to your 11-year number. We've been able, Dean and his mechanics do a great job keeping us up on it. You saw from some of the pictures, it was the 2019 vehicle that was photoed recently that's in there, and it looked pristine underneath because that was something that was kept indoors all the time. The ones that were out on the gravel lot are all the ones rotting away from the underside. So, we haven't been in this position for that many years to know exactly where that tipping point is, but we can just tell from, the common sense, looking at it, that we're not going to make 11 years if we can't fix that problem. So, I don't know, does that answer your question adequately?
We're also spending a significant amount of money to do the repairs that we wouldn't have spent otherwise. So there's that cost too. So not only will our buses not last as long, but we're also spending money to replace the fuel lines and.
I'll show a few
that
slides that
was-
have the numbers on there, like,
Yeah, that was a little bit more my question, but no,
Right.
Lou answered the question regarding, so it's not necessarily that it's going to save money, but it's going to, it's going to allow us to keep the 11-year cycle. Okay. And regarding, I really am not a mechanic and I don't,
I'll do
and
both.
this is kind of like probably a dumb question, but I have a 98 Ford, and the runner board just fell off because of rust. But it comes every year or two. I have to replace something because of rust. And this sounds stupid, but like $1,400 or $1,400 to replace a
Couple pipes.
tailpipe or whatever,
Yeah.
or the step, $900 to replace a step.
Mhm.
If you keep replacing it, it's still cheaper than buying a bus.
Well, it has to pass inspection though, and that's the multifaceted, inspection that's done by state individuals. And like they will take a knife or something sharp and just go underneath the bus and jam it up and see if something, if it stays in there, you know, if the metal doesn't have the necessary level of protection and strength to continue on, and then the bus is redlined at that point, and then you have a whole bushel full of you know, comprehensive undercarriage, repair or replacement of components. It might cost you $50,000 to get it back on the road. And at that age, it's not really a good investment to put, you know, that amount of money into, you know, $140,000 vehicle, $130,000 vehicle, if you can only get another year or two out of it. You know, part of it is also the miles that are driven with spare vehicles. It's probably half of what you get out of a newer vehicle. So the cost per mile to keep it up gets, you know, very high in proportion of just being able to carry a younger fleet day in and day out. You know, the repair costs go down and you just get better net results by being able to just avoid some of the repairs that are more structural in nature than.
But as they're discovered, I mean, you know, like these pictures show, they're replaced. You don't just say, you know, forget it, we're gonna be getting a new bus. I mean, you'll spend the $900 or the
Yeah.
$1,400 or whatever on a
But we may
continual.
not spend 20 or 25
Okay.
if it's just even impractical to do that.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
some are a lot more than just $1,000 and our
Yeah.
guys have to actually find, like, if it was paved, we wouldn't have these issues and have to spend these little, some are little, but there were some that are $7,000, $8,000 that will add up over time. So not only having the buses, they're degrading a lot faster than they really should. Yeah.
Okay, Thank you.
I'm gonna just go online because Anastasia had her hand up for a while. You're on mute, Anastasia.
Sorry, I had a couple questions. I don't know if you want me to just direct this specific question to the buses, or can I go a few slides back? I don't know how you're doing that, so just let me know.
Yeah, whatever question you would like to ask.
Okay, so let's start with the first question. You said there was something about getting reimbursed in regards to the students that we are taking from Hartford. I thought we had 127. I see it says 131. And I remember when the state rep, I think his name was Curry, something like that, can't remember. He said we were supposed to get $9,000 per student, not $8,000. What happened to the extra $1,000? Did he not get that? I wrote it down. I remembered it from a few meetings ago. He said we were going to get $9,000 per student. You said that we were only getting $8,000. Where's the extra $1,000?
So we get 8,000 per student if we maintain our 3% participation rate. And then we get 10,000 per student if we go up to 4% participation rate, which we are approaching for next year. There are these are very complex. They have like incentives and these bonuses that you get at the end of the year. They never really tell us how that money is calculated. It has to do with number of kids in a school, and sometimes open choice has money left over. Steve, was there ever a year that you recall 9,000 a student? Yeah, I don't.
Just to be clear, he specifically said in that meeting, and we can go pull it back up. I remember this because I was not for this. He specifically said if we continue to take students, he would make sure it was 9,000, and we can pull up the clip. So he didn't make it very clear that there were specifications. He specifically said 9. I just didn't know there were different stipulations, but thank you for clarifying that, because that was something he definitely said.
Anastasia, another point was made, I know you're not in the room, but he was probably, legislators over the years have advocated to increase it, and there's been some increases, but not all of the things that get proposed go through. So there have been increases and they've helped. I wouldn't be surprised if Representative Curry, he's no longer in the legislature, he took a different position, but he probably did advocate for that higher amount, and it didn't necessarily go through.
Okay.
So that could be.
Thank you.
Yeah.
No, thank you. My next question is this. I saw that you were saying that we had a contract. We contractually hire out the school psychologist right now at $50,000. And I'm all for hiring a permanent position. So let me make sure that's clear on record. Are you going to hire the person that we're currently using, or would you be like doing an outside search for somebody new?
Outside search, because the contracted people isn't really even one person. We use agencies, retired folks come back and do assessing for us. So it's a conglomeration of folks. So this would be a posted position that would then be affiliated with the NTA or the teachers union.
Okay, perfect. I have one last question. Sorry, Amy, I won't be asking that many more. So I'm a little concerned, and this is why. So previously, many meetings ago, as you guys can recollect, I know I was also advocating for the John Wallace project, which I'm very happy went through. But the ECS grant that Lamont gave out was millions and millions. I'm sorry, not ECS, I'm sorry. The Indoor Air Quality and HVAC grant, which I can pull up and email to everyone on both councils, was millions and millions and millions of dollars. And I remember I specifically quoted Larson and a few others who I have conversations with in regards to ensuring the safety of our children. How come we have to pay this $91,000? And that was a grant that was available for everybody all over the state. Lamont put it out there and gave millions of dollars for indoor air quality and HVAC. I know that they had said we were going to try for it. Did we not get it? And number two, can we take for somewhere else? Because I don't think we should have to pay that back. There was a grant, and I will email it out. You can go on the ct.gov. Everyone got it.
Okay, so you're absolutely right. There was HVAC grants available previously. They required, however, that the town match the money. And last year when we put it forward, our capital money did not match that, so we were not eligible. You're right, other districts got money, but it was not a straight line of grant money like many other grants. This is, you cough up 50%, the state coughs up 50%. And we never had the ability to put forth the 50% on our end. And unfortunately, which we did know is a good possibility, those grants have dried up and there are no more HVAC grants. But it wasn't a flow through. It wasn't like ARP money where we all got a certain amount. It was, you had to show evidence of an eligible project. That wouldn't have been a problem, but you also had to have guaranteed, half the funding from the town. So that is where we fell short. So unfortunately now we don't have that resource and the state money has dried up.
Thank you.
Yeah, go Jessica.
Just wanted, Lou, just to go back to the bus. I know an inevitable question will likely be, it comes up every year, but I think juxtaposed to this is helpful. Obviously seeing these numbers is stark, but it's still, I think, a cost savings compared to, you would mention contracting on our buses, but using like a contract service, as opposed to owning our own buses, buying our own buses. I know Mr. Barnes does a great analysis of this quite often, but just to kind of clarify, like this is still, despite these drastic numbers, still cheaper than the contracting.
Yes.
Okay.
Are you going to be putting up either of those other two things tonight? I'm sorry.
I was going to speak to them in
Okay,
short order, but I think, I'll answer it now. I'll save time later. We did some analysis. We've got reams of research if you want it, but the short answer is it is cheaper to have your own buses. We estimate $700 for all kids who ride a bus in a school district. Having your own bus fleet is $750 cheaper per student over the course of a year. And what is another complicating factor, and again, we have data, but to keep the night young, it's average contracts now, your DATCOs, your first student, are averaging between 16 and 20% increases every time the contracts are renewed. So they're really, I've talked to colleagues, they are getting gouged, and I will tell you that the services are not good. So they're paying through the nose, they're getting substandard service. Parents are not getting the kids aren't getting picked up in the morning. Many of my superintendent colleagues are really extraordinarily frustrated, unsafe situations. So we have really the best option here. And it didn't come up in our previous conversation, our buses serve the community. So they have been part of police efforts, road blockades, police training activities, senior citizen opportunities, Parks and Rec. So our buses benefit the whole community. And we're not for profit. Our budget reflects what we need to get by. Your other First City, not First City as a bank, per student, and many of the other providers, they need to make a profit. They're a business. And so that's another reason why you're always going to have a higher outlay of money in a contracted service. So yes, the answer to your question is it is cheaper to have your own fleet
That's a $750 per student.
per student. And I'd call that a conservative estimate.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor.
Oh, sorry. Forgive me if this is explained in there, but, based on your bubble schedule, is the assumption that buses are not going to increase in prices over the next 10 years?
No, every year the schedule is recalibrated
Okay.
based on the costs that are in the marketplace.
So we're in your budget, in your bubble proposal in the last 5 years at 337, that will be enough?
If we presume there's no inflation, no price changes, that will be how it rolls out.
So if we assume no inflation or no price changes?
To get that correct.
Okay.
Right. If you look at the year that was 488,000, that was the 11-year cycle amount
Okay.
4 years ago. So it's now to maintain this straight line 11 years, it's up to 737,000.
Okay.
And the bubble takes it to the 1,000,001.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
Mr. Halloran?
Let's just make this kind of simple. I was wondering if we could get maybe a 25-year projection on the cost of a 9-year cycle versus an 11-year cycle. If we could kind of look out what the difference would be if we stuck with the 11-year cycle versus if we had to go down to a 9-year cycle, what's the cost difference if we project it out for the next 25 years?
We can do it very simply here. With 8.1 million, that's over 11 years to get to 737. If you go to 9 years, it's a little bit over $900,000. That's about $200,000, investment commitment differential there to do that.
Yes, the right man. Thank you.
Per year.
Per cycle. So
Per
there
cycle,
could be
yeah.
multiple buses in that number.
Go ahead, AJ.
Do you have a rough idea about how much you've spent in repair costs last year for the buses?
Somewhere in the $250,000 range across the whole fleet.
Thank you.
Ms. Yap?
Yeah, I just have a question. Maybe we could just clarify. I'm not sure if it was asked. It's a little choppy. So I know we're talking about the bus replacement cycle. So I know we were talking with Dean about it being on gravel and all these extra things, and that's why it's rusting. So logically, if we're going to pave it, right, won't the buses last longer since they're not going to be rotting inside as often? So we wouldn't have to, we wouldn't have to replace them as often. Isn't that the point?
Yes. The bottom line is we are significantly concerned that continuing on gravel will only allow a 9-year life cycle, where paving it will allow you to sustain an 11-year cycle.
Okay, so only 2 more years. Do we have anything that shows if it would be any longer than that? Not saying I want to compromise anybody's safety. I just want the facts.
We haven't been in this situation for enough years to be able to ascertain that. I just know, and we can certainly ask Dean, that the severity of the deterioration will move buses out of the inspector giving it a thumbs up into saying, I'm taking it off the road and I never want to see it again, sort of thing. So, and when we're up over the 10-year mark, they're very reticent to be able to sign off on a bus because, it's the kids' safety that is paramount in their eyes, and they're not going to be, risk takers when it comes to their evaluation. So the bus is, rotting. It's kind of a reflection on the organization. This is, well, you're not taking care of them to the level they need to be taken care of. And you now want me to sign off and saying it's okay. They're not going to do that on anything over 10 years.
I understand that. So let me ask you a question. So this is what I'm going to ask for, Lou, and Dr. Brummett, and can you get this to me and the Board of Ed? I'm just asking for everybody. So what I want to know is I need to know what the average bus cycle is for people in our DERG, what their average bus cycle is. If you can write that down, can you send that to me? I also want to know if the inspector who you use can send us a report saying what the average replacement cycle is. in addition. So a comparison between buses replaced in our DIRG, as well as buses, what the inspector thinks. I don't want to go by hearsay, I just want to go by facts. And then I think then that will allow us to make the best decision. I am 110% for paving it. I think it makes sense. It's just a common sense thing. But I also want to ensure that we're not just buying buses. As you know, with inflation and different things, the cost of everything is going up. And I'm pretty sure that people drive cars with their kids over 10 years old. They don't just break down. So I just want to make sure that we have the experts making these decisions and not just, throwing up words in the air. Thank you.
Yeah, and I just for the public's sake and everyone at this table, we're not just willy-nilly changing things. Like there's people are going under the bus every single day so that the safety of our children is it's of the utmost priority. So Dean's team is every single day looking at these buses, and before the inspector comes, because we want to make sure that the buses are safe for our children every day. So when there's something rusted out, regardless if we pave or not, regardless if something's rusted or broken or, it needs to be fixed, period. End of story, because we're transporting precious cargo every single day. So
I agree. I want to make sure that's on record.
Yeah. So, but I just want to be clear that the buses are safe. We're not just buying new buses. We're fixing the buses that need to be fixed so that they are safe for the children to ride on them every day. And the inspector is every single school bus gets inspected much more than a typical family vehicle because of that same reason.
Okay. I do need to break in on that. A substantial part of the request is not really achievable. We're one of the few districts that owns and operates their own fleet. You doing a DIRG evaluation is, all we're going to be doing is asking for their contract with their, whoever their hauler is for it. And I was looking through several contracts today, in preparation for this, and most of them have the stipulation, every vehicle that's on the road every day has to be brand new at the start of the 5-year contract term. They give the company the ability to keep a vehicle around that's 8 years of age at that point in time, or anything that's in the fleet has to be 8 years or less. So the questions about getting to the point of 10-year passing inspection with the inspector really only applies to ourselves in Glastonbury in the area, as far as districts that own and operate their own school transportation fleet. So the responses would not be meaningful because you'd have a very low average year age of the vehicles, and they aren't the ones the inspectors are looking for. So just needed to make sure that was understood.
Thank you. AJ, did you have a question still? No. Okay. Mr. Plord, then Mr. Page. Dr. Page.
I'm just Matt. That's fine.
Just Matt. Go ahead. You have the floor.
Thank you. I just had a couple of very brief questions. One on this point, and I'm sorry if it was said, I was very rapidly going through the book. But the plan on Garfield Street, the restoration plan, doesn't include an enclosure, correct?
That's correct.
And it has some work, and I'm sure some work and quite a lot of thought has been given as to why. Can you just explain that a bit more, the absence of an enclosure? Because it strikes me that because of the moisture issues, that may be something that may have been looked into at some point.
I'd like to kind of just ask Dean to join us for a moment and speak to the moisture, because he's the expert over there. I have a decent idea, but I've let him sit without talking, so we got to get him in the conversation here.
If you want to join. That's Dean. Oh, sure. It was just about an enclosure on the Garfield restoration project around the buses. I'm sure there may be some thought to include it.
Well, hello.
The restoration project that was first intended was to restore the property, which funding was available for. Then the garage building that was previously there, due to a circumstance, was torn down for the restoration of the property due to that situation. So to build another building would be considerably a lot more expensive and costly. Even a steel erected building, it's been talked about with other councils. We've had conversations since I've been here for 6 years, even prior to that. So when I came and we were looking at restoring, ideally, I would recommend 100% having a steel erected building put on that whole section of property. It would maintain the buses a lot longer. A few of the pictures that we showed allows you to see the buses that have been kept inside since we've purchased them. They're in much better undercarriage condition of buses that are the same age that have had to sit out on that. Because it's not just a gravel. If you've ever, anybody's been out there, it's not just gravel. It's a dirt product that was brought in that holds tons of moisture. Unless it's 100 degrees for a week, then you don't have that. As soon as it rains, that moisture is just penetrating underneath the bus. And, to the points of, all of our cars, to some point as they get older, they rust and you see that. And it's a lot to what's happening with the salt and the materials that are being used around here for the wintertime. So that sits. We have no opportunity to wash underneath the buses to clean that off. We're looking into that even more so, but that's a great expense. We've already gotten some prices on coating the underneath of the buses with a material that sort of stops the salt and eliminates it. The town has looked at it at the garage side. We are considering it for the buses just because of what the deterioration we're seeing with buses that shouldn't be. You're going to have some rust, but we're seeing not just rust, which is surface, we're seeing rot. And that rot is costing, we have a fuel tank that has to be replaced, which is one of the pictures, it's $7,000 just for one. And if they continue, you'll be required to, and that's where we reduce the life, because you're going to start spending, as Lou has already shared, an extreme amount of money to continue to fix things just to keep them for another year or so. And it just isn't the benefit for the town overall in an operation.
Understood.
Does that answer your question?
It does. It does. Thank you, Dean. I guess as a very brief follow-up, it's plausible that a steel structure or something like that could be added in the future after this paving's been done.
It could be. The town engineer we did speak about that. But there's other requirements which would take probably a few $1 million. I've never built a building like that. I've built a couple of churches in my time, but I've never built a steel structured building, so I'm really not sure.
Maybe we can put the buses in a church.
We could put them in a church. They'd be holy. So, but it, overall, ideally, any operation, I've been all over the country going to conferences and seeing different places where they even like Glastonbury Park's a mall, and they have buses that are 10, 11 years old, and they don't have the conditions we're having. And it's relative to what we have to park on right now. If we could park them inside, I'll be all for it. Hey, can we get a vote to build a love it,
You got to talk to Jonathan about that one.
the town manager, the town engineer, it would be, the ideal situation would be to have a full garage that we could park all of our buses in for the majority, and a wash bay to be able to wash and clean them. That would be ideal.
Sure.
So, thanks, town manager.
Thank you. Dean.
Just a quick question. Does Glastonbury park the trucks, the buses, does Glastonbury park the buses do they have a structure, or is it just like on gravel?
Theirs is all asphalted. Their bus property in Glastonbury is a whole asphalted parking lot area. Yeah.
So there's a steel structure?
No, they don't have, they're not parked inside. They do have canopies because they put solar in a portion of the property. But majority of them are outside, but at least they're on paved property.
So they're not spending money like how we are on repairs?
On the repair part?
Right. And then Are they getting more life out of the buses?
Their buses are, we're running about, theirs is about 11 years, similar to what we're proposing and have proposed. Spare buses are a couple of years older than that. But the state, as Lou, if overall in contracts, and I come from the contracting side, the majority of contracts are 5 years to 7-year life on buses, and then they have to be replaced. They allow you to use spare buses in the 7-8 year life. Some are 10 years, and 10 years is usually the maximum. In most contracts that I pulled 7, 8, we got 7 or 8 contracts today just to review their pricing. So those years are maximum is 10 years. We go to 11 because the condition of our buses prior parking on pavement, what it used to be, were in good condition. And now we're seeing the conditions because of the rot.
So we losing about 2 years. I mean, roughly, we losing about 2 years of life. I mean, on a bus.
Right. You easily could because you start rotting out the floors. People don't realize this. They think it's a steel structure. It's a wooden structure. The base of the floor of the bus is wooden, and that moisture starts rotting out. You start getting areas that and once you start getting that rot, you'd have to tear out the whole bus apart internally to put new flooring down and a state inspector, and there's no value in doing that. And then state inspector has to sign off on it. And a state inspector, if they start finding things like that, they'll deadline the bus. And then that goes against your state reporting. It goes against your overall review by the state. Your insurance companies look at that, and if it can cause havoc. And the state inspectors have no mercy.
Yeah, so we losing about 2 years of 2 years of life, and then we're spending about
Yes.
$250 a year, right? Right. Thanks.
Dr. Page, did you have a question?
Just a couple questions.
Dr. Mitch.
Thank you. Could you speak to, just at a high level, because I know we'll have time in the coming several weeks to drill down on this, the asks for the increases in education technology and social studies. And also you've talked about internal requests for social work and shifting a psychology position from a contractor position to that of a salaried. If you could just speak to how you determine your ratios of pupil service providers in each of your respective schools to both meet your IEP at 504 and other contractual obligations or legal, but also to meet the counseling needs and the general needs of the climate in the school and the social emotional needs of the kids, the students.
I should try to pick that one apart. I can tell you we are within, I believe it's SISCA standards for school counselors. There's a ratio and we are within it. With regard to any ratios, we do look at IEPs and we have to meet them. So we have to look at, do we have enough staff to fulfill the needs on the IEP? That's a good reason why we're doing this para audit, because a lot of our IEPs do have paras attached to them, it turns out. And we're trying to figure out, is there a better way and a more cost-effective way without short shrifting the service, obviously. I apologize, you had asked about social studies?
Social studies and education technology, it looked like there was some significant increases requested there, maybe for some excellent reasons. I just wasn't, it stood out to me as
In the actual budget book?
The budget book. I'll turf that to Kristen and then I can talk a little bit about educational technology.
Primarily the increases in social studies are twofold. One is an increase in request of supplies at the elementary level at 4 elementary schools for play-based learning. And at the high school, there are, speaking of cycles, a lot of our textbooks seem to fall in the same cycle. So there's a request for AP psychology, modern world history, and then one of the online texts as well. So those are always going to be big ticket items.
And then relative to educational technology, we do have an uptick in the number of Chromebooks that have required replacement. We are looking at solutions to that. teaching kids lessons, on caring for their Chromebooks. More significant than that, we're working on a pilot right now where our elementary kids don't bring their Chromebooks home. We're piloting that at several schools. Ruth Chafee was the starter, but we're going to do it at all the schools in the coming weeks. So yeah, there's a big ask in that budget for replenishing our repair and replacement cycle because it's depleted due to Chromebook damage. So that's what that is.
Ms. Carr.
Dean, if I recall correctly, one of the reasons why, we should also pave that bus parking lot is because the safety of the drivers. I know you talked about that in length. And also snow removal. It's easier when the parking lot is paved. I don't know if you want to talk more about that.
That is probably the priority. I mean, the buses are a main priority, but my staff twisting their ankles, gravel is not easy to walk on. During the winter time, you can imagine our park and rec department works with us greatly, but they plow out. And what they do is they divot all over the place because it's hard to plow gravel. I've plowed snow all my life. It's very difficult. So then all of a sudden that turns into ice. We were starting buses on Monday, and because of the ice, 5 of my drivers fell down because you can't see the ice under the snow because we can't clear it. So there's no standing water. So one driver, workers' comp, out for 6 or 7 months, needing surgery is going to be a major cost. I've had it in my history with drivers. So their safety, walking, slipping, falls are a costly effect. So that is one of my real reasons to have it paved. We can fix pipes and we can repair suspensions and rusted and rotted brake lines, but if somebody gets hurt, we can't fix that.
Thank you. Thank you, Brittany. And I saw the buses are all moved today, so hopefully tomorrow's not that bad and Friday people don't slip and fall. Yeah. Ms. Bujerko? Yeah.
Either Dean or Lou, when we decide to retire a bus or it has to be retired, whatever, who do we sell it to or where does it go? And what do we get in return for it? And where is that reflected in the budget?
Okay. Most of the time, the buses are eliminated as offset to the next bid that's coming up. We have a trade-in list that is part of the bid process where we're saying we want your price to sell us a new bus and we want your price for what you're going to give us as a trade-in of this bus against the, partially defray the cost of the new bus. That's probably 3/4 of those vehicles. Some of the others are in condition where they just have to go off to the graveyard because they're not suitable and it's off cycle for bidding. That's there. I know a couple years ago, somebody found a photograph that was from Central America, and you could still see the Newington Public School, emblem and name faintly on the side of the vehicles somewhere in the rainforest there.
Okay.
So they go all over the place afterwards.
Okay, but so it's a cost offset from the supplier, or
Yes,
whoever.
yeah, bring
or,
on a good price.
But we don't sell it to others, to the, 4 or 5 other school districts in the state or to
No.
like DEC or whatever.
Yeah, there's no market there for
Okay,
that.
great, thank you.
Is that cost offset reflected into the graph that you have here in front of us?
In what we ultimately pay for it, those are the prices that we had up there, the 142,000, that's the raw cost. We'll get somewhere between $500 and $3,000 for a bus on a trade-in, depending on how good it is and if it's outfit with wheelchairs or air conditioning.
Gotcha.
The structure itself is not very highly desirable for trade-ins. If you go down 91 to North Haven, you'll see the thousands and thousands of buses that are sitting out there that nobody can find a home for. See that?
Mr. Plord?
Thank you. Switching gears a little bit, I saw in the superintendent's presentation, among the program enhancements was a change in the staffing for bilingual curriculum. This might be a question for you, Kristen, but it seems to me that a change from 2.5 bilingual tutors to 1 full-time bilingual staff member could cause some curriculum disruption. Can you just talk a little bit about what that looks like, if there is any disruption at all?
So there won't be any disruption with the curriculum. To back up, the multilingual teacher is carried under the program of multilingual learners. State statute requires that we have a bilingual program when, and Dr. Brummett mentioned the magic number is 20 in any school. We're kind of at that tipping point where it is also best practice that it's just going to be a matter of time before most of our schools are bilingual, and many of the numbers are right at 18 and 19. So with hiring the bilingual teacher, he or she would not only be providing direct instruction to our Spanish-speaking students, but also supporting teachers in the classroom. So a math teacher with English instruction, but with appropriate supports for bilingual students. Because the number of Spanish-speaking students we have, the unique gift that this teacher would have is being able to translate and have conversation. So when you look at bilingual programming, maintaining language skills in native language is especially important for younger learners because their brain is still developing so much. We want to maintain all of their critical thinking in their native language because as they're learning how to access the curriculum in English, we have to make it accessible, which means that we have to simplify it. So that is sort of one of the benefits that our bilingual teacher would bring us. The tutors that were in there that Dr. Brummett showed, we will be maintaining one of the tutors who is bilingual in Spanish. And then the other tutors are tutors, one of them is also bilingual and she will still be probably serving at a school where there is a high population of Spanish-speaking students. The remaining one and change, I think it's a half tutor, are not bilingual in English and Spanish. But they would be deployed to other programs, say in special education or things like that. They would not be folks that would be a loss for Newington Public Schools, just a loss to that program. Did that help? Okay.
That bilingual teacher lives at one school or shared among the schools in?
So that's PBD. We look at bilingual programming in its totality in Newington Public Schools. So even though the two schools, Newington High School and next year it will be John Wallace, this year it's John Patterson, so you can see where the flow is. We would ideally deploy the bilingual teacher to both of those schools. However, when we look at resource allocation, we're very fortunate that Tom Myler, who is the EL teacher at Newington High, he is not proficient in Spanish, but he's pretty fluent. So he comes with that skill set already. So in looking at the totality of the program, we might have the bilingual teacher working more at John Wallace and maybe even supporting the incredibly close number of 20 students at Martin Kellogg as well. So it helps us to wait until we have numbers for next year. We're required to make the decision about bilingual programming on our October 1st enrollment. So you can imagine a lot changes in a whole year. So it's really looking at the totality of need in the entire district and then figuring out where the most certified staff will be deployed for the students that need that staff the most. Okay, you're welcome.
Can I just follow up on that? Last year, I think we, because at Patterson, we had the same thing, which you mentioned, but we hired a bilingual tutor instead of a teacher. So can you just explain the reason for that?
So the statute allows us to forego the hiring of a bilingual teacher if there is no bilingual teacher that is certified and available. Bilingual teachers are very, very difficult to come by. We believe that we have a bilingual teacher in district that will apply for this position. So we're not at the luxury anymore of saying, well, we're just going to fill that with a bilingual tutor. Outside of that statute, the number of Spanish-speaking students continues to grow and grow. So, it's looking at, do we continue to hire tutors to provide a level of support that is important? Or, as Dr. Brummett had talked about, look at consolidating a small portion of the tutor force, and now we're hiring a certified teacher who we believe is going to bring a level of expertise to both the multilingual and to the bilingual programming. And that was the decision that we made. Does that help?
Yes, thank you. Someone else, Ms. Yap has her hand up.
Hi, what percentage of the students, that of the 131 students are bilingual that we bring in to Newington? What's the number? How many?
Well, all of our students who are multilingual are bilingual.
How many students that are coming from Hartford are multilingual or bilingual? Maybe I didn't ask the question correctly.
So are you asking what is the number of choice students who also qualify for EL services? Is that correct?
Yes.
I don't have that number, but I can get it. I know that you asked that in a prior budget year. I would have to look at that. The vast majority of our multilingual learners reside in Newington.
Okay, if you can email that number, that would be really great. Thank you so much.
Okay, are there other questions on anything we've gone over so far? Mr. Mayor.
I have no question. No question. I just wanted to comment and thank you for your wonderful presentation and for providing us all this information. The book is full of details, so I have to dive into it before I can ask some tough questions. But I really appreciate you guys putting this effort into this, and I'm looking forward to continuing the process.
Don't worry, there's a little bit more tonight.
Don't pack your bag yet, Mr. Mayor. But we'll
Hint, hint.
we'll go
Move it
faster.
along.
Peace out. But I'll fast forward. So often we get asked that, what are our comparable communities asking for budgets? And we're currently in DIRG D, though the state doesn't really use DIRG so much anymore. But regardless, I queried all of my DIRG D colleagues, and I've gotten some initial feedback, which is included in your packet. I believe our ask is right in the average range. Certainly, we're not the highest, we're not the lowest, but you can see, I won't read to the readers in the room, but our next door neighbor in Berlin is a little higher than us. Some are lower. There's only a few districts right now that are board approved. Every system has a different cycle, but you can see New Milford and North Haven are board approved budgets. The rest are very much in a similar process as we are. So those carry through to the next page. Anything that's blank is simply my colleagues have not yet sent the data. So this will be updated. So when we come to the town presentation next month, you'll see this chart much more fully populated and perhaps even see some board approved budgets. And then I'll take averages at that point too, but it's too premature to do averages because so many are not reported yet. So that's the DIRG update. And then, as always, I want to be clear about what would happen if we were to start cutting significantly. And again, what the town council will see in a few weeks might not be this same number. They have not had a chance to go through their due diligence, but we are already using what we anticipate to be the rest of the non-lapsing fund in next year's budget. Anytime we need to cut a certified staff, you have to lose 2 staff members to get $100,000 cut because of unemployment regulations. And of course, any cuts result in higher class sizes if it's a classroom teacher, loss of mental health services. Earlier, it was asked about special ed. I think everyone knows that's a very legally mandated service, so not providing it in Connecticut with the burden of proof law is just, you can't do it. You're going to get due process and face very strong legal fees. Our ongoing efforts to close our opportunity gap and school climate and culture and morale is always at risk when you cut services in the district. So just a quick overview of our next steps. The board now will begin the process of going into this budget book with significant detail. And I spend time over the next month going to PTO meetings, faculty meetings, so that our entire staff is aware of what's in here, notwithstanding the teachers that were here this evening. And then the board needs to approve the budget by February 26th. And then we are slated to present to the town council again on March 11th. So that would be, obviously, we'd truncate this presentation quite a bit since you've already had it, but just updates, maybe more data about DERGs and so on. I did want to, before we close, ask Karen, our assistant business manager, to just, many of you already poked in the books and you seem to kind of already know what's in there, but if you wouldn't mind, Karen, just giving a quick overview of what's contained in the binders so people can start doing their own research in the meantime.
So in the front of the books, you'll see some detail of what's to come for the board meetings. We also have explanation of the process that we're going to follow. It also includes a detailed understanding of the entitlement grants, Title I, Title II. You'll see that. You can read over the different grants that we have. We also have our budget accounts descriptions, which give a very detailed list of the objects that we use. You'll see those are the 3-digit codes in your object book, in your budget books. So there's a detail there. Our location codes are 2 codes. You'll see there's a definition in your budget book for each of the locations in the district, each of the schools. See, there's a superintendent's final program structure, which will list out the budget for the current budget, the 24-25, compared to 25-26. There is also a summary of program improvement changes by program. You'll see those listed, and we'll get into detail as we go through. The ones that have the budget books have the tabs. Unfortunately, you do not have the tabs, so you'll have to go through them page by page. So in your different program areas, there is a summary first page, and then if you look, there is a detailed page of the program itself. It gives a very detailed overview of what the program is, the goals, the improvements, and if there's any needs for the program. When you get into the right-hand side of the budget page, you'll see the different numbers and the asks and the different object codes, which is detailed up here in the front. We also provide to you account details where the areas of increase are and where there were reductions in the budget in the specific program. Any questions? Very detailed. Little light reading for you. Tomorrow during the snowstorm.
Yeah, our budget books are guaranteed to cure insomnia. So that concludes my presentation. Before I turn it back over to board chair, I just want to thank all of the folks in attendance tonight, both around the table. Lots of great questions, which we appreciate. As questions arise, both board members and town council members can send them out. What I do is keep a running list of all questions with answers attached to this presentation. So it will update itself if you're looking at the electronic version, which is always helpful. And again, your kind attention and attendance tonight is appreciated. Please take cookies home with you. And I will turn it back to board chair for any final comments.
Yep. Any last minute questions? Okay, well, what you said before, thank you. Yes, I'll echo that. Thank you for this. Okay, and that brings us to, I put my agenda away, public participation. If you're, oh, Miss Yap has a question.
I didn't have a
Before we
question,
move
I
on.
just had a comment.
Okay.
If you can hear me, I just want to say thank you all for putting this together. I know it takes a lot of work and a lot of hours and time. So I do appreciate that. And Dean for jumping on, and Lou and Steve and Kristen and everyone else who's in the room I can't really see. But thank you for putting it together. And also, I'm also very thankful that we're able to meet again collaboratively with Town Council and Board of Ed, which I know Jessica and I advocated for a long time. I actually think her longer than I. But no, I'm just thankful that you guys put this together, and it was very seamless. It was easy to read. Thank you.
Yes, I think we all advocated for the collaboration, which last year was a very good success. So we hope to do it again. Okay, public participation on any matter related to board responsibilities. Ms. Del Bruno.
Good evening, everyone. This is Beth Del Buno, 327 Walsh Avenue. I just wanted to say, first of all, thank you. I know this was a lengthy presentation and I appreciate all the effort certainly that went into creating the budget and presenting it this evening. I know how difficult that can be. I just had a couple of questions, and I know you don't necessarily answer tonight, but I had heard mention in the beginning of the presentation of a program that I wasn't familiar with, the Nor'easter Afternoon Academy. And based on the description, I'm guessing it's a credit recovery program, possibly, but if you could let me know if I'm accurate in that. And then when it came to the buses information, I did notice that 7 are on order this year, which I guess my concern is we're talking about these bubble years, but it sounds like we're almost creating another one. So I know in the past we had very difficult fiscal budgets where we wanted 3 a year and we didn't get them. But now that it's in the CIP program, the buses, it's a little different. And I'm wondering if we might consider going back to somehow funding buses annually at a set number each year to get back in a regular cycle like that, even though I know that's difficult sometimes to maintain. And then out of the 76 vehicles that were listed on the grid, how many school buses are used, like full buses and smaller buses, to run the daily routes? So how many are used daily and how many are spare? Was another question. And then just wanted to advocate if you would consider, I know typically the slides are put up on the website after the presentation, but also if the bus information and the CIP slides that you had also could be added, that would be great for the public to be able to review. So again, thanks very much for the presentation. I look forward to the ongoing discussion.
Thank you. I don't see any other hands. Nobody in the room. Okay. Next is remarks by board members, but I'd also like to open up to our council members if anyone else has anything to say.
Just to thank you again. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Especially the format of the book, putting together, it's started, very difficult when you listen to all of our suggestions and theories and questions and whatever. And I know you've been formatting and tweaking it every year, so it's a good job.
Thank you. Ms. Weaver?
Yeah, I just want to echo all the sentiments. It's Love Fest. It's thank time. But when I say individual staff, thank you so much for all those signs. I know how much work goes into all of these budget books, and would just implore any of our council members or folks online tonight to continue to come as we dive into these books over the next, what are the dates? Monday, the 10th, Wednesday, the 12th, Thursday, the 13th, sacrificing Valentine's Day for this
Sorry about
budget, the 19th and the 26th. And as a reminder, for our charter or whatever, we have to pass it by the 26th because our deadline of March 1st. So just wanted to let everyone know that timeline. And also just to really highlight our changing demographics. I think that was the original We Are Newington slide. Just to see that, I think it's one of those things does drastically change the need of things, just to keep that in mind. And then lastly, I would just say, I'll be curious to see, I know there was a lot of mention at the governor's budget address this morning about education, about the things that are going on in the state. And I think some things we've had across this table for a long time, obviously, looking at lack of federal funding for special ed, but in general, a lot of unfunded mandates and a lot of things that we need that are trickling down to the town. So appreciate the advocacy, not only for those here at this table, but our state representatives as well, getting as much money as we can from the state, getting closer to that fully funded ECS, and making sure that we can, get some of the burden of that special ed cost off our town. Because these are where it shows. So just want to say again, thank you, everyone. Also, just a plug, policy tomorrow night. If anyone would like to come, my incredible policy queens and Mr. Farisi is included in that. I think we're going to do virtual just to have it, but it'll be at 7 p.m. Check our policy website for that. How to plug it, sorry.
Mr. Sharma?
Yeah, I just want to thank our mayor for coming over and then all the council members for your time. And we look forward to working with you guys. Thanks.
Yeah, and did you have something? Mr. Hall?
Sure.
Oh,
I will. Now that I've been called, I'll echo what everybody said. This is one of the reasons I got into local politics is to see the town, the public, everyone who wants to be here in one room, talking about issues that are hard to decide on, but trying to do the best for the town. And I think that that is the commitment we all have, no matter which meetings you go to and which rooms you normally sit in. That's why we're all here. And just thank you very much for everybody to making the time and the sacrifice to do what's right for our home.
yeah, and I was just going to say, I think it was 3 weeks ago, our meeting, we had the dean and come for the bus rust presentation. So it goes a little bit more in depth in the explanation of the pictures. So that's on YouTube if you want to look at that. But we did also cover buses a lot tonight. So hopefully that's a consideration. And yeah, thank you so much for coming. And John Wallace, it's going to look great. It looks awesome. I like the colors.
Motion to adjourn.
You don't need a second.
Oh, we don't need a second. Sean always, yes. Okay. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion. Meeting adjourned. 9:12 p.m.